Tucker Carlson might have you believe that he's not a big fan of the media. He's previously called them animals and cowards just in April. Says, I just can't overstate how disgusted I am, not simply by the details of the lying of the medium, but disgusted by the emphasis. The media is basically Praetorian Guard for the ruling class. I really hate them for it, I'll be honest. Now, this segment is about how potentially maybe he's feigning a bit of his hatred for the media. Later, we'll go back to focusing on how he's feigning his hatred for the ruling class. But for now, let's focus on the media. And bear in mind, we have with us, David, you know Tucker Carlson, or at least did. Yeah. I've never met the man, I don't know him. So we have a different perspective in that way. But what we've got here is a lot of people coming out and saying, no, dude loves to gossip with the media, actually. He loves to frame things his way, play stories and things like that. So this is Ben Smith from the New York Times says, Mr. Carlson spends his time when he's not denouncing the liberal media, trading gossip with them. He's the go-to guy for sometimes unflattering stories about Donald J. Trump and for coverage of the internal politics of Fox News, not to mention stories about Mr. Carlson himself. I won't talk here about any off-the-record conversations I may have had with him, but 16 other journalists, none from the Times, it would put my colleagues in a weird position if I asked them, told me on background that he has been, as 3 of them put it, a great source. Michael Wolff called him a primary super secret source. I don't even know what that means, but anyway, so he rails against the media quite often, pitching them as either snitches or stenographers for the status quo, which I largely agree with, but probably not in the same story as he would, and that sort of thing, purveyors of cancel culture and all that. But he seems to like gossiping with them. What are your thoughts?
A couple of things. So yes, I do believe that Tucker Carlson does hate certain members of the media. We all do. We all have people in the media that we think are terrible. We all, whether you're a police officer or a teacher, there are bad apples in every bunch. My relationship with Tucker Carlson goes back a ways. So Tucker Carlson worked at the Arkansas Democrat Gazette newspaper in the early 1990s. I was a television reporter at the ABC affiliate there in the mid 1990s. We shared anecdotes on the 2000 campaign of the John McCain bust. So I got to know him then. He goes to NBC, I went to MSNBC. I would substitute for his show, 2007, 2008. To me, he was always a really nice guy off camera, and even on camera, we would have our disagreements, but he was always respectful. But the one thing that really stood out to me is that when I got in a little bit of trouble with Hillary Clinton and Chelsea Clinton, and it was a long story, Google David Shuster pimped out if you want all the background, but I ended up on the front page of the New York Post. Pimped out reporter gets suspended. And I've been, so here I see my career going up in flames at MSNBC. I'm suspended for 2 weeks. I don't know, my parents are asking me, what is this all about? And there I am on the front page of the New York Post. Tucker Carlson comes up and says, Shuster, this is the best thing that has ever happened to you. This is great. Go out and collect every New York Post you could possibly can. Save them. This is terrific for you, Shuster. And I'm thinking, really? And so, but that to me was his sort of view, the idea that you are the news, that you are the one that everybody is talking about. You now have a reputation as a ball buster, whatever it is. He thought that was awesome. And to me, it got to sort of my overall view of how Tucker has evolved over the last now 12, 13 years. And again, it's been 6 or 7 years since I've actually had a conversation with him. I think this really is a game to him. I think he knows that as long as he's feeding this stuff out to the masses and he's controversial and he's saying crazy things, I don't think he really believes most of the stuff that he's putting out there, but he knows it gets a huge audience. He knows how to play the conservative game better than anybody, as the ratings on Fox News for him show. And so he just keeps feeding it out there. And he does take some umbrage and some frustration with some of the journalists who are lazy, or people who are not sort of the more sort of pure. If you're gonna be a journalist, be a pure journalist. If you're gonna be an opinion pundit, be a pundit. And I think he does take some issue with people who cross the line. But again, to me, this is just a game for him, and he's playing it really well. Would I play that game? No, I couldn't pull it off the way he pulls it off, because to me it's inauthentic. But Tucker Carlson has a way of understanding. He embraces that he is the story. He embraces that he is creating this narrative about Republicans and about Democrats, and he loves it. And so that's just my view in terms of how this has all evolved. I think it's dangerous, and I would say that to him if I had my next conversation with him. But to me, that's what's going on.
I think that you're probably right about his motivations, and especially like you can afford to do that when you're independently wealthy and all that. And you don't even need to succeed necessarily, even though he is. Yeah, and by the way, I hate that impulse. The idea that the person delivering the news is the point of the news. I hate that. I've often told the audience that if you find at some point, if you can reflect and say, wow, after watching John on the Damage Report for a long time, I believe that politics is about watching John on the Damage Report, then please leave while you can, because I've ruined you. That's not the point of this. Yeah. But anyway, it definitely does seem like he has changed over time, potentially some politically, but even just like you talked about him being, even on air, he's very respectful. I definitely wouldn't describe him these days as respectful to those he disagrees with. Like, it is a pretty absolute thing.
I do think, yeah, you're right. He has evolved very sharply on that over the last 6 or 7 years, I would say, for sure.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.